Hello, folks. Welcome to my channel, and especially to this new session on a practical guide to mobile testing. Today, we'll be discussing around the different scenarios related to mobile testing on real devices as well as emulators, simulators, and all other stuff. But before we begin, let me today's session will be more about. Like everyone knows, mobile has gained a very lot of popularity in the market today, and every business wants their mobile application to be circulated in the market as early as possible, which gives an important aspect of testing. Which gives an important aspect like the testing is more important in that scenario. Without testing that application, we cannot release that particular application in the market, because it would again be a kind of a negative situation for the business then. uh, Before we begin around testing and all other stuff, let me introduce you to Wasik Bhamla, who will be guest appearance, who will be a guest in this session, and will actually share his experience around mobile testing and other stuff. So, hi Wasik. Yeah. Wasik, can you just give me a brief introduction about yourself? I cannot hear you. Can you just take your mic, please?
Sorry, my
Yeah.
mic was muted.
No
So,
problem.
hi,
Notice.
my name is Vasik Bangla, and I have more than 17 plus years of experience in a QA industry, and I've been working on mobile testing since more than 8 to 9 years. And apart from that, I am also an open source contributor and recently started on YouTube, where I'm sharing my knowledge about testing on my channel. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Wasik, for this brief introduction. Before we begin, around the session, let me just discuss around the agenda for this session first. So we will be talking around what actually mobile testing is. We will be working around and discussing things around why testing is important, what are the different types of mobile applications, what are the different types of testing types that can be actually applied on mobile application while performing the testing. We will also discuss like when and how do I start the testing process when I'm working with the mobile applications. We'll also work around and talk around the test plans for mobile application. We'll also touch upon some points related to testing strategy, and we'll also discuss around specific test scenarios. We will also discuss around test scenarios related to mobile testing, and finally we'll touch upon points related to mobile test automation, where we'll be covering different points such as like how do we follow test pyramid, what are the mobile devices that can be used for testing the mobile applications, uh, what are the mobile test automation frameworks that are popular in the market, and which one should we use accordingly for our product so it gives us a better quality output. And we'll also test touch points related to real devices versus simulators when we are testing with the mobile applications. We'll also talk around how do we perform parallel test on the cloud devices as well as on the real devices, and parallel test execution, how does that help while testing the mobile applications, and how uh, how and when like automation is necessary, since 100% automation is not a kind of an ideal scenario. And if there is an there is a there's a point like we need to automate different stuffs and we need to give a quality output to the stakeholders and release a quality app in the market, how we can leverage exploratory testing and also take use of shift left testing, which is popular these days in the market, and how do we utilize that in the exploratory testing. So there are a lot of things that will be coming down. I'll just request all of you to just stay there till the end of this session to get most out of this session, and get more aspect around mobile testing as well as test automation stuff. So let's start with the first aspects, like everyone knows like quality is the key, and we need to check everything and all the possible permutation and combinations, so we do not let any loopholes in the mobile application. As well as while testing, we do not leave any bugs around in the app, and we release a quality app in the markets. And since mobile devices have personal data of the end users, and as well as it's necessary to perform checks with the respect to security and the data integrity as well. And also like the checking the performance of the application is equally important, as well as the security aspect of the application is also equally important. And this all leads to like testing the application to the fullest. Like it's not like just doing the functional testing or the performance testing or the security testing of the application. It is important equally to take care of around the different aspects of the application before we release in the market. Now let's take an example of a simple app like WhatsApp. If there is a kind of a bug in that application, like if you're trying to send a message to one of your friend, and that message actually shows that it has been delivered from your phone, but the other person has not received that, it might be a kind of a very painful situation for both of the users, where the application shows a fake status like the message has been delivered, but still it has not reached the other party who is actually expecting a message from you. So all this stuff needs to be tested thoroughly. This is another part is like if you have entered a mobile number in the WhatsApp application to send a message, and that particular instead of posting the message to that application to that respective mobile number, the message is being sent to some other number. This is also kind of an personal integrity and data integrity issue which needs to be taken care of. So all of this stuff needs to be taken care of, and that is why the testing is important. Now let's focus on why is testing important. So Vasi, can you just give some of your inputs around like why testing is important? I know that you might have tested a lot of mobile application in your 17 years career, and what actually gave you a kind of a situation where you thought like testing is very important before we release anything into the market.
The reason why testing is important, because in specifically for mobile, there are larger audience. The target audience are very large. Because of that, it is very important that the application should be of high quality. Okay. So if the application is quite buggy, it provides a negative experience for the users. That what will happen ultimately, there is a possibility that the user might stop using the application. So that way, it will be indirectly a loss to the company. So it is very important that we deliver the quality of the product. Whatever we are delivering, it should be of high quality. So that's why it is very important to focus more on mobile testing part.
Okay. Another adding another point to that is like if you are working on any mobile application, and there are multiple aspects to the mobile application. Like it can be installed on a mobile, so there are different scopes that needs to be discussed with the business analyst or with with the stakeholders before we jump on testing. So there are some certain clarification that also needs to be taken care of. Like for example, if you are building a mobile application, and you need to make sure from the stakeholders like which all mobile devices or types of mobile devices did this particular application will be installed on. So there are other devices such as tablets, there are iPads, there are you have phablets also. Though these things are not popular these days, phablets are not that much popular, but still you have some of the other things available in the market. There are unlimited versions also, like there are minor version of iPad, like you have iPad 3, you have iPad Air, you have iPad Pro, you have iPad higher version of iPad as well. You have tablets related to different companies from different mobile companies. Like you have from tablets from Xiaomi, you have tablets from Samsung, and so on. And each of these things have different screen sizes as well as different OS versions and different OS as well. Like recently a new OS got released from Xiaomi, that was Xiaomi Hyper OS. This also equally adds part to the testing part. Now you need to make sure first thing from the stakeholders, like if this mobile application will be available only on mobile devices, or it will be allowed to be installed on tablets, iPads as well. So equally adding to that, your scope will increase. Now if it is required that your device, your mobile application is available on tablets as well as on iPads, then equally you will have to start with the other process of testing this application on the required devices as well, and you would require to have those devices on the available on the available for testing purpose as well. So this is where the part fits in, like you need to know what all things that you require for testing. And equally, talking about testing, importance of testing here is, so if you just try to, like for example, you got a mobile application delivered from the dev team, you installed it one in one of your devices, and then you said that you perform all the test scenarios, cases and everything, and you release it to the market. Now when the end user actually installed that application, he installed it on any other version which was available to his mobile device. Now for example, you tested it on an Android 11 and popular Samsung S22 5G, for example. But when you release that application, it was installed by a user having Android version 10 on some of the older version of Samsung, and then what happened, it actually crashed. So this is where the importance of testing lies. You need to make sure that you test on the lower version, on the higher version, on the popular version, on the popular devices, on the minor version, minor devices, and so on. So this is where the importance of testing lies. The other aspect of testing is to make sure that everything, what the functionality, the performance, and the security part, as well as the data integrity and everything, is working hand in hand of that respective mobile application. So it's not like if the application is working on the on a popular device, but it's not working on the minor version. This again leads to chaos between the engineering teams as well as with the end users. So we need to make sure that so testing actually makes us highlight all the issues that are available in the mobile application, and that needs to be fixed before it is released into the market. Going to the next step, let's talk about like different types of a mobile application. Now Wasik, can you take a lead on this? Like you might be knowing more about mobile application, what are the different types?
Yeah. So there are like major three types of mobile applications which you can see in your day-to-day activities or day-to-day usage of mobiles. There are like first is a very common application is called a native application, which is like similar to native to your mobile. Like for example, calculator. It is a native application. So now these are very common for the pre-installed application on your Android or device or iOS device. These are very common on that part. Apart from that, there is a web application where we open it on the mobile browser, for example. So that is another example of web application. Now, the most commonly developed application type is called hybrid application. Like most of the application you use in your day-to-day life, it is called a hybrid application, where it looks native, but inside when you open some links, it open it inside the application itself in a web view. So that is called a hybrid application, where a web view is open inside the application itself. So these are three major types of application. Apart from that, recently now Flutter is also being used for development. So that is also another framework which is being used for creating the application. So that is a different type of application altogether. So it requires a separate testing strategy for testing of Flutter.
Can you give even an example around native web, mobile web, and the hybrid applications?
Most example, like for example, hybrid application, if you take an example of Twitter or X application, where you open your tweets and see whatever posts are there, whatever is trending. In that, if you click on any link which is shared, it will open it inside that application itself. And another example is like a LinkedIn application, that is also a hybrid application. Okay. And for a web, you can open any website which will open in the browser of your mobile. So that is a web application.
Okay. So you talked about like Flutter applications as well. So is it something different from the actual mobile application, or is it something different, altogether different?
Mostly like it from the automation point of view, it requires a separate utility to automate it. For example, in APM, they have created a separate driver for that. Okay. So because of which we need to slightly modify our testing strategy by using a different inspection tool to inspect the elements and all that, those things. The UI components itself is a little bit different from normal application, which I have noticed. Although I have not actually tested a real Flutter application in any project, I've just did my own research and tried on my hands on with that application.
Okay. So considering the popular application called WhatsApp, is it a native application or a mobile web or a hybrid?
Where WhatsApp, I have not seen it opening any links inside its own application. It normally opens it in the browser, so
Mhm.
it will be considered as a native application because it does not open any web view inside it. If you share any links in your status or whatever, and anybody clicks on it, it will open it a separate application corresponding to that links. For example, if you share a YouTube link, it will open a YouTube application, and if you share any blog link, it will open a blog in the browser. Normally it won't open it in that same application.
Okay. And what about LinkedIn and Facebook?
LinkedIn, Facebook, they open in their own application itself. They create open a separate web view page, and then it loads the page on that. So it is considered as a hybrid application.
Okay. And since we are talking about different types of mobile applications, like can you share some experience around like testing hybrid application or maybe native application? What challenges have you faced around it?
There was one first project which I worked on was like a cross device communication application where there was a purchaser who purchases something from a particular store, and there is a seller. So what happens normally? The seller will initiate a payment, and the purchaser will use their Bluetooth to connect to their seller's device and complete the payment via the there is a sensor on the device, NFT sensor, I guess. I'm not sure about that sensor part, but with its help of that sensor, the connection gets established between the two devices via Bluetooth, and then the payment gets completed. That was a very complicated one, first project on mobile. So that part I have, I was able to automate with APM. So the challenges are different. Like it happens, suppose like multi-user application, it happens that one user is using iPhone, another user is using Android, and one user is using a mobile device, another user is using a tablet. So it depends on the users, what type of application you are testing, and what scenarios can come across in that application.
Okay. So while testing, like doing manual exploratory testing, uh, when we talk about like native application, is it easy to move ahead, or the other type of application called as mobile web application or maybe hybrid application, which is the toughest one to test?
Hybrid one, I would say little bit on a complex side because even from more manual testing point of view or automated testing point of view, it will be little bit tricky to test the web views. Normally, what happens, we automate the web view or we test the web view on normal desktop browser, and then we try to test it in the same browser by just reducing the size. Normally, people do that kind of exploratory testing. But when you come on actual device, it sometimes happen that it behaves differently. So that way, it will be little tricky. Like so, first is a hybrid. The complexity is on hybrid part. Then web normally people test on the desktop first, so it is not that complicated. The second complexity would be native application because it depends on the broad device. Like Android device will behave differently, iOS device will behave differently.
Okay, I remember one of the application that we tested while I was working 4 year back for one of our small company. That company actually had a website, and they used to make a payment of different hospital bills using the website. I actually the bill would be generated and sent to the sent as an SMS. A link would be sent to the user, where he used to like click on that link, and the link would open in the browser. Now what happened was, this link can be opened in the web browser, in the desktop or maybe laptop, as well as on the mobile phone. So if you're talking about mobile web application, is it something same like Selenium can be used to test that application? Or like when I talk about automation, APM can only be used like for testing this application? Though I did a kind of manual exploratory testing, so that application, like the link you for making the payment used to open in the Chrome browser if it is installed in the mobile device, or maybe whatever browser that is installed in the mobile device, that link used to open in that browser. And ideally, if you want to open the link on the laptop or desktop browser, Chrome or Firefox, Mozilla Firefox, or any other browser that you want, it would open there as well. So if you're talking about testing this application using automation, mobile web application, what are your thoughts on this?
So if you means you are asking whether we need to use Selenium or APM for automating web
Yes,
application.
yes,
So
yes.
normally what we do for mobile, whether it is a web application or any other application, we use APM. Since APM is built on top of Selenium, it will be very similar. The process of automating will be very similar. Just that it will the capabilities will be different for the mobile web. So you need to set the browser and the device name, device version, and all those things you need to set properly. And what it will do internally, APM uses the Chrome driver only. It will there is some settings which we can do in the APM server where it will automatically download the Chrome driver for your browser on the device. So for Android, normally we prefer using Chrome browser for automation, and for iOS, native Safari browser is automatically used for that. So it is not a problem. We can automate it with APM only. The process of finding the elements will be exactly same as for Selenium, like how we inspect the elements using the dev tools from the browser. We can use that to inspect the elements from mobile device also. So I have created one small video on my channel where I have shown how to inspect the elements of a web application using the Chrome dev tools. So if anybody is interested, you can check out on that channel.
Okay, so we have one comment from one of the user in the live chat. He has mentioned, like, can you provide test strategy regarding testing during release time? How effective we can run or add in pipeline? So ideally, there is a section that is coming on in the discussion with regards to how and when and how do I start testing. So we'll be covering this question in that particular topic. Uh, so going
You
to the
can
next
uh,
topic.
you can show this comment also on that on this. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we cover this particular topic with related to testing, I'll just pop again this respective question, and then we can answer this question as well.
Okay.
Okay, now coming to the next topic, the different types of testing. Though mobile testing is somewhat very much popular these days, and when we talk about, so it's a subset of software testing itself. Everyone knows that. And there are multiple types of software testing, like functional testing, non-functional testing. Then we have in non-functional testing, we have performance testing, security testing, usability testing, UI/UX testing, accessibility testing, and so on. And there is also another part, like if you're talking about fintech applications, you talk about domain application knowledge as well, which is equally important to test those applications while we are doing functional testing. So my question here would be like, there are multiple types of testing that are available. So which app requires which kind of testing? How do I come to know like this particular application is a fintech application? Which types of testing does it require? If it's a kind of e-commerce application, which types of testing does it require, and so on? So can you just throw some lights on this particular type of testing that needs to be covered for different mobile applications?
Mostly, like all the application would at least require functional testing, because functional testing is the basic of all the testing types, like whether the application is actually working or not, the functionality of the application is working or not, that we need to test. So functional testing will be done on all the devices. Similarly, like accessibility testing should also be done on all the mobile, all the applications, irrespective of what application type it is, because there can be users who maybe have some disabilities, so we should also consider them and to do a round of testing for accessibility. And apart from that, like performance testing, normally it is not required in all applications. performance testing are required on an application where there is a scenario for multi-user, like multiple users are logging in at the same time. There are like high traffic of transactions being done on that application. For example, Twitter or LinkedIn, it requires some performance testing because there is a huge user base where the users can come on the platform and start posting some things, and there are like high traffic of interactions between the users. So these kind of applications require performance testing. And another type of testing is security testing. Security testing is also needed in some critical applications only, or not on all the applications. Mostly in the banking application or any fintech type of application where there is money transaction is being done on the mobile,
Mhm.
on the application. In those scenarios, security testing is very, very critical because we don't want any kind of vulnerability in that application where any attacker can exploit that vulnerability and access the user's critical data. So in that scenario, we need to have very good security testing on that part.
I
And
have I have one point related to accessibility testing. I remember in while working for ThoughtWorks in 2021, we had this scenario like we had a discussion with the different stakeholders related to like should we have the accessibility testing covered in the mobile application, and that mobile application ideally was built for car drivers ideally, and it was taken into account by all the stakeholders that since this is a application that will be used by drivers, and ideally very less percentage of like a kind of disability, the persons with disability have this usage to this particular app. So probably if you are a car driver, you ideally, so there are people who have disabilities and drive cars as well, but the percentage is very less. So that particular accessibility testing part was pushed to the later stage, like if we need to first, so there were different slices of application that were built. The first part was performance functional testing, then performance, security, all these covered, and at the end when time is left, then we can cover part of see accessibility testing. So it was not given that priority. But considering the today's popular applications like Amazon, then we have Facebook, then we have Twitter, Instagram, and so on. So accessibility testing is very much required in these applications, as the user base is actually a lot of amount of people. Then you don't know, like there might be some people with different disabilities who will be using this application. So we need to make sure that this application works exactly the same way as it works for the other people who do not have any disabilities. So ideally accessibility testing actually adds up to the base user base and gives more quality. Like uh, people tend to use your application and you do not know, like if your accessibilities IDs and everything are put correctly in the application, it might be an added advantage for your application to gain more popularity. So ideally this should be considered based upon the number of base users that you have for this application development. The next thing related to performance testing, I remember 2 points that we discussed when I was working previously for one of the esteemed customers in freelancing, and the application ideally was categorized in. So this application was built for B2B, business to business. So ideally, if it is an application that is built for business to business, ideally performance testing is not that much required because business to business does not have that huge customer base. But if it's built for business to consumers like B2C, then definitely performance testing is required. So this is the way how we categorize the performance testing stuff for performance testing things for the mobile application between B2B and B2C. We need to make sure, like if you have a huge customer base, then after functional testing, as soon as that functional testing things are covered, you need to make sure that the performance testing stuff is carried on. And ideally, if it is equally important, like if you have pipelines, automated pipelines built for your product, you have a separate pipeline built for performance testing. So equally, when the functional test, unit integration and all other tests are run, then finally in the same stage in the next pipeline, the performance testing test also runs. So it is not left for the end, like when the release time is near and then you have less time, so ideally you'll have to postpone the release because of the performance tests are failing. You will not be able to release that application in the market, and as it will hit the quality. Then comes the next part called the security testing. Like Basic mentioned, for security testing is equally important. So I remember like 3 years back when I was working for one of our project, the logs which was on Amazon web services, that logs actually disclosed the PII information, personal information related to the app users. And the client actually gave us a kind of a, he actually, the client actually came to know around this PII log. So he pointed out, like, there are some names of the clients as well as the customers phone numbers that are being displayed in the logs, which needs to be immediately removed, as we do not have to log in the personal information of different customers in the log itself. If you want to log that information, you need to hide that information. And like those information needs to be retrieved only in case of emergency, like if there is a kind of transaction failure or any other such stuff, then only you need to like have those things included. Otherwise, these debug logs and all other stuffs should not have any kind of personal data of any of the clients available in the market. So this is how like security testing helps us there. Because if that testing does not if these things were not highlighted, and there was a kind of an hacking hackers might have got like access to those data, then it would have been like it would have been a kind of a business loss for the client. Yeah, Wasik, over to you.
Yeah. So apart from this type of testing, there is one more type of testing called UI UX testing. Normally, like we test how the application looks on the, like how the application looks overall, the alignment of the elements on the screen. If the size of the device increases, suppose a user goes from portrait mode to landscape mode on the mobile, then the alignment of the elements should not be misaligned. It should be properly aligned. So we should consider those aspects of testing also for while testing. So normally while automating, we do visual regression for this kind of testing part, where we compare screenshot to screenshot, whether the application is working as expected or not. So with visual regression, we come to know if there is any change in color, or there is change in any minute change in the alignment of the element. We will be able to identify it immediately.
Okay.
And these kind of testings are also done at the development level also, where when the developers write their code, they also do snapshot testing also for each components, whatever they are developing. So they make sure that the components are exactly looking similar to what the actual prototype design are being created by the UX team. So
Hmm.
these are also done over.
So I remember one case, like when I was working like with ThoughtWorks, I had this case for UX testing as well as usability testing. This was explicitly, there were two different tickets that were actually put into the sprint board for these types of testing, and it had some scenarios as well that needed to be covered. Like there were some mock screens, different mock screens of that application that was given, and that the acceptance criteria mentioned that the mock screen should exactly match with the application that is built, and ideally we had to sit with the UI UX developer as well as with the business analyst to make sure that everything that is being developed has been particularly developed as per the mock screens only. One bug I remembered, though it was a cosmetic issue, but it was more related to the brand, and the brand background color was actually aqua blue, but the UI UX developer has actually put it to sky blue, which actually made a slight difference, but it was related to the brand. So the client mentioned that we need to get it fixed as soon as possible, and we cannot like go ahead with the release until and unless this is fixed. So I came to know that though UI UX testing is equally important, how important can it be for the client and the stakeholders, because it relates to the brand, and the brand logo needs to be like updated correctly as per the mock screens that was built by the customer himself themselves. Another part is, uh, do you know about like have you worked on maybe we can cover this point later, because I think we already have one point related to testing. So UI UX and usability testing. So you mentioned about UI UX testing, like the background color, the font, text size, and so on. But when it comes to usability testing, it is more or less concerned with the using of that application, how easily it is for the customers to use their application. Now everyone knows there is no documentation built for using Twitter or Facebook application, though every user who comes, maybe a new user or maybe an old user who comes to that application, easily navigates through each and every steps, like from registration till using and posting a particular news data in the news feed, or uploading an image or everything. It is so easily built that any person who does not have any zero knowledge around like mobile application can easily use those applications. So this is how the usability should work. So the same way, if you check about like Google Maps or maybe Gmail, everyone can easily go ahead and check those applications. This is how the navigation and all other stuff and the usability part is been like checked and been worked upon, like the testing been taken into consideration in such a way that the user does not have to go ahead with the documentation or all other stuff. The application is so easy to use that even a normal layman person can go ahead and use that application. Do you have any points related to this stuff, Wasik?
Yeah, normally like we try to include usability testing along with the functional testing when we do some manually, because as a user we try to imitate the user's behavior and try to explore the application accordingly. So the application should be developed in such a way that it should be easy for any new user to get onboarded quickly. They should not be stuck in any part of the journey. So for that, the application design this all usability should be taken into account while designing the application. So while designing on stage only, we should be the designer should consider this the usability part and then accordingly design the application. So it is easy for a new user to complete their journey for the application without any problems. So these are the things it should be planned out beforehand before starting the development. Like how the design of the application should be, how easy should the application be for the user, so they can complete the journey and all these things.
Ideally, the user journey should be taken into consideration while
Yeah.
designing that application. So first screen 1 will appear, then screen 2 will appear, then screen 3 will appear, and accordingly these all fields needs to be updated accordingly in screen 1, screen 2, screen 3. And
Yeah.
in any of the screen, if the user loses the traction, then in that case he should be taken back to the previous journey, and he should be
Yeah.
make so comfortable that he knows what all things he has been lost, and they can like accordingly make ways for the next steps to be easily like move around in the application without making any like uh, complex things for the app, for the end user.
Yes.
Okay,
So
the next
like
part. Yep,
yeah,
go ahead please.
actually I was saying something I missed. You can continue.
Oh, okay, no worries. So let's now talk about when and how do I start testing. Now, everyone knows like we are working in the agile era today, and agile means like everything goes hand in hand. It's a kind of a scrum or maybe a Kanban thing, and everything like you should keep the ball rolling ideally. And the testing should not only begin when one step has been completed, it should be going hand in hand, like even when you are talking about the technical stuff or maybe talking about the designing of the application, the testing can be done at that step also. And you need to the tester actually needs to make sure that everything is being taken into consideration which he might require later. So if it is as per the experience of the tester that needs to be taken into account. Like for example, make sure that the developer is writing the so when the application is being built, make sure that you ask the developer to write the unit test as well in the first step itself. Then ideally the integration test should also be covered. So at the end, if nothing is written, like for example the developer just writes down the code and develops the application and sends to you to for testing, it would be again uh, a kind of a build that you would get which would not run at the first install. The application starts failing in itself. It would have been better if the application that has been developed by the developer would have been initially tested at some of the emulator simulator, maybe on a real device itself, just to check if the application actually installs on the mobile device or not. So this is how things can be kept, and for the ball being keep rolling. Other part is when we talk about testing, so there is a sprint planning session that has been uh, planned, and there is also kind of a we have another session. After sprint planning, we have discussion session available for technical and all other stuffs as well. In that time, when the application is being developed and the developers are working on the technical part of that particular story, the testers can actually take part into creating the test cases, asking the clarification, checking out for the doubts, the different types of use cases that are available for that respective mobile application, which needs to be taken into consideration, the different types of domain knowledge data that needs to be taken into account, the different types of real-time use cases that would be required to test that application. All these stuffs can be like beforehand taken by the testing team them, so that it helps in testing the application in a very smooth manner once the application is being received in testing phase by the testing team. Wasik, over to you. Do you have anything further to add?
So normally, like while development, there should be a separate environment for testing also. So normally, like there should be a dev environment where the developers are developing their application. So the APIs should be mocked in that scenario. So what will happen with that when the developers are developing, they are not stuck, and even the testing team are not stuck for testing. So we can plan to start the testing at an early stage of the things. Whenever the UI is ready, at least the testing team can start testing the UI part. I have seen these things are not followed in many of the companies which I have worked in my experience. Like they try to overlook this requirement of a separate environment. So it delays the start of testing altogether.
Right, right. And I've also observed the same thing while I was working, like one of the project, when the application, every time it had the same case. Like whenever the application was developed and sent for testing, the first case failed itself, like failed there and there itself. We were not able to install that application. Either it was due to the mobile device issue, maybe related to the minor version, major version, device related issue, Android version issue, and so on. And we were not able to install that application also. And then we had to again send it back to the development team, stating that this application is not working, can you just try that build again and then send it across, so that we can start with testing. And all of that time, like 3 to 4 hours were wasted in all this stuff itself. So these hours can be saved if we have a simple step to verify, like a unit test, or maybe a unit test to check if the application actually installs on the devices that is been developed, that is been taken for testing purpose. So this is how we can save our time. The other part is uh, testing the application on different devices and other aspects, which will be covering in the test plan phase. So when we talk about testing, we should have a test plan phase as well. Like we should plan everything that needs to be tested. So starting with the first case, the first and the most important case is checking if the application installs successfully on the mobile device or not. That is the first case that you can talk about. Now when you talk about test plan, there are multiple aspects that needs to be taken into consideration. The first part is we need to make sure, like, which area or region this application is being targeted to be released. Like for example, if the application is to be released in Europe, if the application is to be released in US only, or maybe in Europe and US, or maybe in Germany, or maybe in India, or maybe in Asia itself. So we need to make sure, based on the based on the region that for which the application is being targeted to release, we need to make sure what are the popular devices, what are the popular versions, what are the popular platforms that are being used in these specific areas. And based on this, we can just design our different test cases and test scenarios, and as well as test plan around it. So the first plan would be, which mobile device should we choose for testing. Now this is the most important part that we need to make sure of. Like, when, if you are working remotely in India, but your application actually is being targeted to be released in US, you need to make sure that you do not test it on the Android device at first. You might check it on major devices, major websites that are available over the internet, which actually shows you what are the popular mobile devices available in US region, what are the popular OS version releases. If it's ideally, if you see, iOS tops the list. So iPhone is majorly used in US. There are multiple versions of iPhone that are being used. There are multiple versions of iOS that are being used. There are multiple mobile devices that are being used, even from starting from iPhone 6, iPhone 7 till iPhone Pro Max. 15 Pro Max, and so on. So you need to make sure what all devices you are choosing for testing, which is the most important aspect. Because if you do not choose the device, if you, like for example, you are working remotely, you test everything on the Android device, but when the testing team gives a sign off and the release is been done in the United States area, you just receive a message in the same day itself stating that the application does not install on the mobile devices, and you're in a very much jinx stating that I tested everything, it's working fine on my mobile phone, how is it not working then you just check out the logs and see that the application was installed on iOS device which you had never tested. So this should not happen. The test plan should first consider the cases related to the mobile devices that needs to be tested, what all things that needs to be covered, what are mobile platforms, OS versions, mobile devices versions, and so on, that needs to be taken into account. Vasik, do you have anything similar to this?
Yeah, apart from all this, we should also consider like when to the entry point of the testing and the exit criteria. So, what is the entry criteria? When should we actually start the testing, and when should we say the testing has been done? So that also we need to consider in that test plan. Apart from all these scenarios, like the different devices, the different types of devices, different size of the devices which we want to test on, different types of devices like a mobile or a tablet. If the web application is there, so which browsers we need to test on, is there any specific browser we need to target, and all those things we need to consider about that. So apart from this, like normally we have already covered most of the things for test plan.
I have one more point. Based on these devices that I was talking about, like for example, come to know that there are Android as well as iOS devices that are available in the market that you want to release your app. So in that case, what we did was, based on the test plan, we used to take five top devices in that in this respective area, maybe five iPhone devices and five Android devices, and based on this we would choose two devices which are most popular. Like for example, out of five, there will be one and two device number one, which is like for example Galaxy S23 5G Ultra, and the other device is the minimum lower version, like which has Android 11, Android 10, maybe Galaxy S Note 20, something like that, which has Android 11 version. So one device with the higher version, popular device with the OS latest OS version, the other device with the lower version and the lower maybe device name as well, like so. And out of this, we would also choose one device with the bigger screen and one device with the smaller screen. So ideally it helps in UI UX testing as well. We come to know if anything is getting truncated in the minor device, my device is minor version, or maybe with the smaller screen size, if anything is not working fine as with respect to the larger screen device. And similarly we would do for iPhone devices as well, one with the lower, one with the popular version like iPhone Pro Max with iPhone 17.4, and another one with iPhone 12, iOS 12 with iPhone maybe 8 or iPhone X, and so on. So ideally with smaller screen with bigger screen, it would give us good leverage and covering of the test scenarios based upon the UI UX testing, usability testing, functional testing, checking the screen sizes, checking out for the truncating of the different stuffs on the mobile devices, working on the application, and installing of the application in the minor version of the OS as well as on the higher version of the OS. And this gives us a confidence like this mobile application ideally works like 70 to 75% fine in all of the popular majorly used devices in that respective area. So this was ideally what we used to plan when we used to plan with regards to the different mobile devices, choosing the different devices for testing purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
So another point is, creating a test plan. We should also consider the point that we need to do for automation, mobile automation ideally. So what all devices will you choose? So the same devices, four devices that we chose for manual exploratory testing, ideally we would choose for testing on automation testing as well. And there were some cloud platforms that we had on which we had those four devices registered, and ideally we chose those devices for testing purpose as well. So our test ideally ran on the pipeline with all the four devices. So there were 10 different test cases. For example, we had 10 different test cases. Four devices multiplied by four equal to 40 test cases. So these 40 test cases ideally gave us a confidence that 70-75% of the mobile application is working fine in all of the popular devices in that available in that area, which gives us a confidence in telling the stakeholder that we are good to sign off. And if any of the test cases that are remaining apart from what can be automated, we used to perform a kind of manual exploratory testing, and we ideally shift everything to automation, which can be done or in automated purpose. But in case if the scenarios did not permit us to do a kind of automation stuff, though everyone knows that 100% automation is not achievable and not possible. So in that cases, like for example, cases related to locking the device, unlocking the device, letting the device idle, and so on, all these particular test cases were performed in manual exploratory testing, and explicitly it were mentioned in the test plan itself. Okay, do
Yeah.
you want to add? Yeah.
So apart from this, like I was also considering that if you said that 100% automation is not possible, that is the correct statement. Considering that all the permutation combination we should not be doing the testing about. But if we implement the test pyramid properly, we can conceive, we can confidently say that at least the application code is nearly 100% test once we implement the test pyramid properly, where the unit tests are written properly with 90 plus percentage of coverage, integration tests are properly written, then the API testing was also done properly, because at the end mobile application they not communicate with the database directly, they communicate via API. So now this the API layer testing is also done properly. And apart from that, in automation part should be considering only the unique journeys. Now, what I normally see in my experience is the companies they try to automate all the permutation and combination, simultaneously. They want to automate everything. Like they want to uh, come up with some 1,000 test cases, which is ideally is not required also,
Hmm.
because if your application is working on one journey, it will work for 1,000 journey. It is not practical to automate 1,000 scenarios doing the same thing but different test data with different permutation and combination. That is also one thing which many companies are practicing quite a lot in this time. So normally, what would happen that the permutation combination should be done for via API end-to-end journey, and the critical unique user journeys should be done via UI. So that way, the automation suite will be very, it will be running much faster, and you will get faster feedback on that part. So while
So
testing, while planning, we should also consider these all things, and accordingly, we should plan it so in such a way that we are getting faster feedbacks.
just to reiterate what you are telling, ideally while doing test planning, what you suggest is, when you talk about end-to-end test journeys, so there are multiple test journeys in an application. These
Hmm.
journeys could be covered as a part of API end-to-end tests. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about UI UX part or the functional aspects, like if the integration is working correctly from one screen to another, and then similarly the
Hmm.
application is working fine from different screens to different screens, in that case all these tests can could be covered as a part of mobile automation test, which ideally would not do all the permutation and combination, but it will
Yeah.
just consider a happy path scenarios where the scenarios are working fine, and it will just verify that the working of the UI is correctly as per the design, and it's working as expected or not.
Yeah. So normally, like what happens, there are like different combinations the team normally comes up with. Like for one is one user journey, they are using like multiple test data. So what we can do, we can automate the same same user journey on the API part, and with we can with different test data, we will get much faster feedback from the API rather than UI, because UI itself is will take some time. And when you create the UI automation suite, then you should consider that the happy path is also covered, and the error scenarios are also covered, business error scenarios, where the user gets dropped on a particular journey. Like user, so for example, on login page, the user entered a incorrect credential, then user should get dropped, and the user should see proper error messages. So that scenario we should put it in the UI automation suite. But different combinations for a same user journey, we can try to add it in the API and complete it. So API will give you much faster feedback compared to UI.
Okay. As the happy path, if you cover it just once, it would work the same way for the other test,
Yeah.
permutation and combination as well. So it gives a better view, like you cover it in the API test,
Mm.
so it would be faster, quicker, and you get a faster feedback around the bills that you are
Yes.
that are under testing ideally.
Yes. So what we can do at the planning stage, we should map out all the unique user journeys, whether the happy journeys or the drop journeys, where the user gets dropped. All the unique journeys, if you map out at the planning stage, you will have a much clear picture, like which one to automate from API, which one to automate from UI. So that we need to start working on the planning stage. So there is one more question in the comments regarding the API calls. You can put
Yeah,
it.
we can cover it in the next section, that is test strategy. So while doing all the test
Yeah.
strategy stuff, both of these questions will be covered. So let's
Yes.
quickly move on to the next stage, that is test strategy. Now, test planning, we plan a lot of things, okay,
Mm.
but when it comes to strategy, how do you execute that? How do you execute those plan? Whatever you have planned is actually related to the strategy. So you need to devise a strategy very well, so you execute everything that you have planned. Otherwise, planning is of no use. You just keep on planning and you do not execute anything. So that doesn't make any sense. So whilst when it comes to strategy, let's take an example of a ticket. How will you actually test a ticket based on the test strategy, that on the test plan as you know? So as per the plan, you says that everything that is been part of the sprint needs to be delivered at the end of the sprint. So the strategy is, how do you perform those testing, and how do you, like chunk out all the tickets that are available for testing purpose. So ideally, let's take a ticket that says that, like, all the functional part needs to be covered. So like I said, uh, if you implement the test pyramid very well, then in that case, the functional and integration unit and the integration test, if those tests runs file, like 70% 75% part of your testing is almost complete in that stuff. Only the manual exploratory stuff, that is 20 25% is remaining, and ideally it helps you a lot in performing the test, because you do not have to run the same test again and again at a very basic level. You are sure, like, ideally it will install the application, the whatever window that you are talking about in the ticket will actually pop up, and you will be able to see that screen, and you will be able to actually play around with the screen to do the testing part. So when we talk about strategy, there are a lot of things that needs to be taken care of. Like, for example, I can give you an example. In the previous project that I was working, we used to there were the mobile application that was developed was released for iOS as well as Android platform, and I had an Android phone, but the company provided the iPhone. And I being a test lead at that company, I did not go ahead for owning an iPhone. I asked, like, one of our subordinates or colleagues should be provided an iPhone. Maybe two iPhones is available, and we need two iPhones needs to be made available, and we ideally need to have those phones, like one smaller version and one higher version. So ideally, those two real devices were required, because the client made a mandate, like, we need to test on the real device before we release into the market. Otherwise, we would have used the cloud platforms such as like browser stack, lambda test, and so on, to test those applications on the real devices that are available on the cloud platforms. And then the two real devices were made available. So ideally, what we used to do, one of our colleague, we were working remotely, and we used to get on a Zoom call. And ideally, I used to keep my Android phone open with the same steps, with the same ticket. Like, for example, I'm working on a ticket, we used to pair, we used to do a kind of pair testing in that case. So I would open the same ticket, the other person was also open the same ticket, but he would be performing all the execution of the test scenarios on the Android, on the iPhone, with smaller and the higher version, and I would be doing all the execution of the test, same test, on Android phone. So this way we saved time by executing both of the tests. So within 1 hour we used to execute 20-25 scenarios related to Android smaller screens, higher screens, iPhone smaller screen, and iPhone higher screen, as well as minor version, major version, and so on. And we used to get a feedback, like there were around, I remember at a time we used to get around 4 or 5 different bugs, and we used to post all of the stuffs to the in the same ticket with the other person who tested on iPhone would post everything he got, the bugs he got on the iPhone, and I would post everything related to iPhone, mentioning that I verified everything on Android and he verified everything on iOS devices. And accordingly, the respective developers, there were two developers, because one was related to Swift development, and other was related to Kotlin part. So those of both of these developers used to accordingly check those comments out and then provide us with the resolution for the fix. Now this way we can also check out, we can also strategize our testing, like how we can jump on a short call and finish everything apart from doing the testing. The other part is, when it came to uh, release verification, like it would be sounding a bit odd. It would not, everyone would not be familiar with this version, like release verification. Ideally I would call it as a verification that is performed before we release anything into the market. So we had one plan, like we used to organize a bug bash. Now, in that bug bash, we used to invite all the development team members, business analysts, UI, UX developers, as well as the stakeholders. The testing team was also involved, but they would not perform any kind of testing, but they would actually liaise and coordinate with all these team members. And before doing that, we used to ideally create a sheet in which we used to put up all the tickets, the minimum version required, maximum version required, the different types of persons who would be participating in that release, what kind of mobile phone they own, and from where they will be getting the respective APK and the IPA version of the respective files, and how, which all tickets we need to cover, and how we do perform the testing. And ideally we used to give them a update, like this is the different chunks of tickets that we need to test, but it is all up to you how you need to perform the testing. It's all up to you. You can perform the testing as an end user would perform. And ideally we used to get like around 70-75 different kind of issues coming from the different aspects, because everyone is new to that particular product. We are the testing members, we know in and out of the product, and we are performing day in day out, and we know around the different issues that we face. But these new people do not know about the application, where they would perform in the same fashion than an end user would perform. And believe me, like we used to get critical issues, like the application getting crashed at the time of installation, and also some issues related to the functionality is not working, the domain base, the use case is not working, and so on. And we used to perform this kind of testing before 2 weeks. So ideally we have 1 week for fixing and another week for testing, and finally we used to perform the release. So this helps a lot. So ideally there was one comment, I'm uh, just showing that comment here. Can you provide test strategy regarding testing during release time, how effective we can run or add in pipeline? So before moving on to the pipeline, yeah, in pipeline also we can perform this kind of testing. Like we used to have one pipeline, we used to follow uh, test pyramid ideally. And in test pyramid we used to have different test set of tests written for unit test, then we integration test, then contract test, and then end to end test, and finally the test. After all these tests ran successfully in the development environment, we used to perform, create a build, and deploy those application in the testing environment. When in the testing environment, the testing team member would pick up those respective builds and perform manual exploratory tests. Once all the tests were performed, and if there are any kind of issues that are still open, that would be sent back to the development team members, who would fix those issues, and in return they would provide us with the resolved issues. We used to perform a kind of regression testing, and also retesting all the different issues that we had raised in the earlier cycle. And once everything is fixed, we would again deploy it to the UAT environment, which was built particularly for testing it during the release time. In that UAT environment, we just had the end-to-end test scenarios upgraded in that particular pipeline, which would eventually run. And once those end-to-end test scenarios ran successfully, that build would come to a standstill, waiting for to be deployed in the production environment. So this is how we can effectively ideally keep the automated pipeline also handy for us to run those tests, particularly in the pipeline, and giving us a quality build. And in that scenario, like if there is a kind of an issue in the UAT pipeline, if while running the end-to-end test, then it would again show a kind of a red flag there, stating that this is not working correctly. So we would again take download this respective builds. Maybe if it's showing a kind of an a red flag for Android build, we would download the Android build and manually perform exploratory testing on those scenarios again. And if it's a kind of a genuine issue not related to any pipeline or any technical related stuff, we would show it to the developer that this is a kind of issue that we are facing and we need to fix it before we release it to the production. And this is how we effectively manage the pipeline as well as the release time cycle as well. Wasik, do you have anything to add on?
Yes, I can remember one project I was working on. It was, the best thing which I liked about that pipeline strategy was it was designed in such a way that if anything fail, the other part will get blocked automatically. For example, what will happen? The developer's code gets there will be one pipeline for linting, where it will check the code linting of that the project, and once that passes, then the unit test will get triggered. Once that test completed successfully, then the integration then the contract test will get triggered. Then contract test get passed, then the integration test get triggered. Once that is passed, then the application will get built and it will get deployed to a particular location where we can download it. So it will be loaded as an artifact, and later on, once that is done, the deployment means the build is done. Then the automation test will get triggered, and the automation suite will fetch the built application from particular location, and it will start the automation testing. That's how we normally did. So in automation also, the API test will start first, and then the UI test will start first. So like all these things were done in such a way that if any things fail, the other things get blocked automatically. So after the unit automation is successfully done, then it will be deployed to a higher environment, for example, UAT environment or a pre-prod or a production environment. Accordingly, the build of that particular environment will get developed, built, and deployed.
Correct,
So
correct.
this is the strategy which you can try to implement in your project also. It is very effective, and the stakeholders and the client will also be impressed with that strategy, because they will be getting a clear picture about what exactly is happening with their application.
Yeah, when it comes to pipeline, I also remember one more point which came around penetration testing. So ideally, when the all of the testing were done before moving to production, our client mentioned that we need to perform penetration testing also on the mobile application before we release it to the end users. So ideally, we sent the builds, the APK and the IPA files for pen testing, and we got a comment like there are some security vulnerabilities that are available in the dependencies of the respective open source dependency that you have used. So ideally, we came around with a new step in the automated pipeline itself, where we ran the security checks before performing the unit testing of that respective code. So ideally, I remember that was checkmarks, that tool that was used. We also have another tool called sneak.io that can be used for performing static analysis of the security things, vulnerabilities as well, and that gave us a very good insight around the things as well. So we were able to fix all the vulnerabilities related dependencies in the build itself before in the pipeline, before we build anything in the code itself. And all of that issues were fixed before we like created a new build for the respective pen testing. And this way it helped us solve our penetration testing related, and it gave us faster feedback and solved all our related issues to for the vulnerabilities as well. Moving on to the next question, it's also related to the strategy part only, like performing security testing. Can you guys please tell how to debug monitor API calls going out of mobile apps during testing? I think Wasik, you are the very good person to answer this.
Yeah, so normally we can use the Burp Suite. Burp Suite, what it will do, it will act as a man in the middle, and it will capture all the API calls happening from the mobile, and it will show it to you. And accordingly, you can try to intercept any calls and modify their request or response accordingly. And once you intercept and modify the request, you can send the request to the server, and accordingly you will get a response of that request. So you can use Bob Suite for that. Bob Suite Community Edition is good enough. You don't need to purchase any license for that. Your work means that the task which you are looking for, like monitoring the API calls, you can achieve that part using the Bob Suite. So I think I have
Cool.
answered this thing.
Yes,
If
yes,
you
yes.
are not using Bob Suite, you can also use Charles Proxy also. So that is also doing the same thing at the end.
Okay. Now quickly move on to the next part. It's almost 1 hours that have been completed, but I would move like 15 20 more minutes before we make wind up for this particular session. So specific test scenarios related to mobile testing. Now there are multiple scenarios that we normally test day in day out, but there are some specific test scenarios that are related to mobile testing and are very much important, that we need to perform, because if we do not perform this kind of testing, ideally it would come out from the production, we will have to sit back late night and then close out all the issues that came. So ideally it's important that we look around those scenarios as well, for effectively and getting a quality help released into the market. So the first part is related to the battery usage. So Vasik, can you I think you might have tested these scenarios previously as well.
Yeah, so this scenario is helpful when you are testing on a real device. So in our scenario, we normally try to automate on the emulator, but in some specific use case where the real device is actually required instead of emulator, in that case we need to check for the battery usage, that application is not consuming too much battery. So that part we can monitor using the performance metrics from the device. So there are like plenty of tools which will be helpful. If you use APM also captures the performance metrics, and it will show you the battery usage, CPU usage, and all those things. Like you can monitor from the start of the application to after the end of the test case, what is the difference between the battery percentage and CPU usage, whether it is keep peaking or like how it is exactly happening. So you can do that part, but it is only specific to a real device.
Okay, but in case of, this is more important to test, because when you are releasing an application, it will be used on the real device only. So it is important to check that the battery usage is set to be minimal, so the application is not eating up large amount of battery while using the application, because ultimately the end user will end up not using that application, and
Mm.
the business might be in a loss as well. Also, when the application is in background, it needs to be verified that the battery usage in the background is also minimal, it is not eating up lot of battery out there. Like there we have smartwatches available, there are most of the application that needs to be kept running in the background. Like for MS Fit you have Zep application, for mobile Xiaomi mobile you have Xiaomi fitness application. All these application, if you're testing, you need to make sure that the application does not eat large amount of battery, and when it is in the background, and also it does not heat up the mobile device as well. The CPU is also not that picking up that much. This all needs to be, like, these are all side cases but needs to be verified to keep the business smoothly flowing and not ending up losing the customers. The next specific scenario is related to mobile device being left idle. So if there is a login functionality implemented in your application, then when you are just killing that application, you need to make sure that it is not actually logging you off, like logging you out from the application itself. The app, if the app is being left idle, if you come back around like 15 minutes, if you open the app again, you should be in the same state that you where you left ideally. It should not log you off. So this is also an important scenario that you need to be make sure. If you're using a payment related app, so in that case, if the mobile phone is left idle, and so for example, like take a scenario where you are making a payment, but while making a payment you just start talking with one of your friend, but you have not entered the UPI ID or whatever the passcode that you have, and at the same time the application is idle for some time, and the mobile device gets locked. So after you open the app, app again, unlock the phone, it should be in the same state and it should be in the same area where it was left earlier. It should not be like the application should have locked you off, or you may be in the some other page. It will also eventually lead you to a customer raising a chaos stating that my application state is not being left where I was left, and then again I have to use the same application, and so on. In case of mobile app, when it is left idle, like for example you are using a uh, financial application related like stock market, or maybe any other app that is related to the financial markets or fintech. In that case, if the application is left idle, so if there are chances like you are just checking the BSE or the NSE Nifty options, and you are checking the share rates and so on, and you need to make a buy or a sell trade in the using the application itself, and you just left the mobile device idle for some time. So in that idle time also, you need to make sure that app is not consuming huge amount of battery in that time. It should be like minimum usage. And if the application is been like you are on the using the financial application only for making a trade, you have just made that application go into the background, you have opened another application to check out for the some of the rates or the exchange currency rates or gold rates or so on, and any other thing. And again you come back by from the background itself, you are making calling the app again from the background to make whatever transaction that you left in the middle to complete that transaction, and again you see that the app has locked you off. So this is also a kind of a weird scenario, and it might create a kind of a irritating behavior for the end user, and they might end up using your mobile application. So you need to make sure you test such kind of scenarios as well. Another scenario is related to the locking of phone. I already told you one of the scenario where you are doing a kind of transaction, your phone automatically got locked for after 15 seconds of inactivity, and again when you open the phone you see that the application has already locked you off, or you are not on the same state where you were left it earlier. So this also is a annoying behavior of the application, and it needs to be tested as well. So wherever you have left, the same state of application and the same screen should be displayed to the user as well. Another scenario, this is a kind of a very mischievous kind of scenario, I must say. We used to perform these kinds of scenario while testing, while performing an application a transaction from an application. Like for example, I'm using a kind of a GPay application, and I've just made a transaction of 1500 rupees. I just clicked on make payment, and as soon as I click on make payment, I have locked the phone. And then I open the phone again, I see a kind of an error coming up there. This should not happen. Ideally, when you have clicked on that make payment button, it should initiate the transaction, and the background it should hit the server, and the transaction should get successfully completed, or whatever the state may be, you should get that respective. It should not be that while you are making the application lock, the application gets killed in that process, and you receive a kind of error. So this is also an annoying behavior which needs to be tested. Again, when you are using the phone and your application is on, and again you lock the application, it should again be taken into account that the battery usage should be minimal, and the phone heating, CPU usage and everything should be minimal. It should not heat up, and you should not eat large amount of battery out there as well. Washik, do you have to add anything here?
No, you have added almost all the points. So there are a couple of more questions from the chat. You can.
Yeah, we can take those questions. I have just one more point to cover up here, related to the location services and the Wi-Fi. So I have observed this particular thing in most of the applications that I tested previously, like Wi-Fi and the internet connectivity part is totally being ignored by the UI UX as well as the business analyst team, where they do not have any mock-up screen available for internet connection when the internet connection is low. For example, making a transaction, I just end up or turning off the Wi-Fi, switching off the Wi-Fi, or turning off the mobile data internet which I'm using, and it usually shows a kind of a error 404, 4034 forbidden, or kind of a 400 error, and 500 error, and so on. So this should not happen. You should have a fallback screen. Maybe it's a part of chaos engineering, where you should have a kind of fallback screen available which should show that no internet connection, will be online, we are offline, we will be online soon. This kind of message should be appearing on their mobile devices to let the end user know that their mobile connection has went off. Otherwise he'll just keep on refreshing the application, and then raising calls to the customer care, as well as raising annoying emails stating that the application is not working. And when the users and internet is back again, then we should be taken to the respective screen where he left. He should be taken, like he can again initiate the transaction if he has not done that before. And finally, related to the uh, uh, one more scenario I faced was from switching from mobile internet to Wi-Fi connection. Like if you are using Wi-Fi connection while using the app, and suddenly you change to a mobile internet, then also that mobile application should be functional. It should not give any kind of message or error or any other respective thing, because most of the time this needs to be taken care into account. As the testing team has not performed this kind of testing, they cannot give a brief around like if the application is working fine on such kind of connectivity issues or not. And finally, the location services. Now if you're testing a mobile application that is more related to the map or any other stuff related to the Google Maps or maybe iPhone Maps and so on, so in that case location services needs to be working fine. So in that case, if you turn off the location services, then again it should be taken into consideration that the application should work fine, or accordingly it should give a appropriate message that the location services have been turned off. You need to start the location service to use this application successfully. Same way, like if you're working with the applications such as Ola, Uber, or InRide, or any other mobility transportation service application, the location services also should be taken into consideration, that to check that application. Finally, one more point related to the airplane mode. If you're testing the application and you directly switch on the airplane mode, what happens? You need to make sure that this also scenario is a fallback scenario and needs to be taken care of. And you should have a mock screen which should say that you have been switched the airplane mode on, and you need to make sure that the airplane mode as well as the respective services are turned on before you use this application. So these are all the scenarios. These are mostly specific to the mobile testing and needs to be taken care of while testing. Let's switch to the another question that we received. Wasi, can you take this on, please?
Kindle
Can we test?
application.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. Means I'm not used Kindle. So Kindle is a separate device, or how?
It's a separate device, and it is mostly used for reading books and or other uh, like online reading materials.
So mostly it is supporting only reading material only. So I'm not sure there is any separate application being developed on Kindle.
Hmm.
I'm not sure
If
about
that
this.
application has a developer options or any other option that actually helps in testing,
Hmm.
then that can be done. Otherwise, we'll have to check around for the different test scenarios related to
Yeah.
this application.
Yes.
Okay, moving ahead to the next question. Can we configure and run regression tests in real-time devices in CI/CD platforms?
So we can do that. We need to use cloud provider like the browser stack or Lambda test, where they provide a real devices to test the application. So we can leverage them, the cloud providers, and accordingly run the tests on the real device.
Yeah, and real devices, ideally, you should perform some regression testing on the real devices, because ideally the end users will be using the real devices only. And
Hmm.
there are specific scenarios that there are specific issues or errors that you might face on the real devices only. So it is recommended that you use the real-time devices available on CI/CD platform for performing the testing. But make sure that you use the latest popular devices, as well as the minor as well as major versions, to test your application efficiently.
So apart from that, if the application is a critical one, like a financial domain application, so in that case, you cannot directly use the cloud real device instance. So what you can do, either you can create your in-house device farm, where you can connect to your local CI/CD pipeline, which is running on your in-house device farm. Then you can automate it on the real device, which is available inside your company. So you can do that, or you can purchase a license from the cloud providers, where they will provide in on-premise option also, where there is no issue of security part. Because normally, like the financial domain application, the companies, they don't want their application to be on a publicly accessible device. So it's better to purchase an on-premise license from cloud providers. So that is also one.
Okay, cool. Now coming to the last part, mobile test automation. So there are some key points that needs to be considered when you talk about mobile test automation, or if you want to jump onto mobile test automation in your project. So the first part is like I would again say the same thing that we talked previously. Follow the test pyramid religiously. It will eventually solve lot of your problems related to test automation. The next point is related to choosing the mobile devices for testing, like like I said and we discussed in the earlier section of this talk. We need to have minor versions, major versions, smaller screen device, bigger screen device, as well as for different platforms on which the mobile will be tested, as well as we need to consider the geographical location where the actual mobile application will be released. Wasik, over to you.
Yes, we have covered almost all these things.
So one more point. There are some more points. I will just quickly finish them related to mobile test automation framework. So while choosing the mobile test automation framework, make sure that whatever objective for your test, running the test on automation are available, you should make sure that those objectives are achieved successfully. There are a lot of mobile test automation available, frameworks available in the market today, such as APM. Then we have WebDriver IO, as well as we have for visual regression also. There are multiple things available in WebDriver IO as well as in APM also. Then we have other, there are a lot of frameworks. You need to make sure that accordingly whatever framework you choose should achieve the objective that you are trying to achieve using the test automation. Then testing on real device, emulator and simulator, you need to have a team call with the team, where you need to make sure where exactly you want to run the test on real devices, on emulator simulators. Ideally the preference is when you run the unit test, it should be run on the emulator simulators or locally. If the developer faces some issue, he can ideally solve it. Similarly for end to end test journeys, ideally on emulator simulator, the tester can run the test to check if the test is running fine. When you post that particular test on the automated pipelines, we need to make sure that you test on the real devices using cloud platforms. Now with that comes the existence of parallel testing as well. So you have four different devices, like I said, 10 test cases on one device, like it takes 10 minutes. So if you talk about four devices, 40 test cases, it will take 40 minutes to run the test. So this is where the power of parallel testing can be utilized. Parallel testing, all running means running all the four tests parallelly at the same time. So it will complete all the four tests in 10 minutes, and it will give you faster feedback, as well as it will test give you the quality output as well on the different four devices, rather than testing on a single device, getting all the issues, then on the next device getting all the issues. It will eventually eat up your 40 minutes. Rather than using parallel testing, it will give you all the result in just 10 minutes itself. And finally the shift left testing, which is a very popular topic these days. Like if you are working something on end to end testing, like for example you have a one test case which you feel can be shifted back to integration testing step or unit testing step, you should feel free to talk to the developers stating that this is a test case where available in end to end test journey, and I feel if we keep this test here, it will be a late feedback, because this needs to be tested in the unit testing itself. If we get the feedback in unit test or integration test itself, it will be easier for us to know that the application is working fine or not. And in this way we can get a quality build in the QA testing environment itself, and we can do all the manual exploratory as well as the automation stuff, and then finally we can release it to the end users. So it will eventually save the time, and this is how the power of automation testing using parallel testing, using testing pyramid, and doing manual exploratory testing and automation testing combination, you can just release quality builds into the application. Wasik, do you have to add anything here?
No, you have covered almost everything.
Okay, I hope you all enjoyed this session. I would recommend you to let me know your thoughts around in the chat, and do subscribe to my channel. Also, Wasik has his channel. I'll be updating the description with Wasik's channel link, as well as the I have a blog written on mobile practical guide to mobile testing as well. I'll be posting that link. Whatever we discussed here is available in that blog as well. And also I'll be sharing the links related to the continuous testing group that we have on WhatsApp and Telegram, as well as on Discord. So you can join that group and raise your queries. It's mostly related to learning group only. We do not entertain any testing jobs related post queries in that group. So I would recommend you to join those groups as well, and do subscribe to my channel as well as Vasik's channel. And we will be coming up soon with another topic related to the software testing. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Vasik, for coming to my channel for this
Yeah,
insightful session. It was
yeah.
good to have you here.
Thanks for inviting.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.